Hi, this is Mary Beth Roach. I'm the publisher at Macmillan Audio, and I'm here with Jeffrey Archer talking about his new book, A Prisoner of Birth. Jeffrey, I'm glad to have you with us.
I'm glad to be with you.
People are often curious about an author's routine or style. What is your daily routine when you're working on a book?
I'm a very disciplined writer. I will go away in January and February, and I rise at 5 in the morning. I write from 6 o'clock until 8. I take a 2-hour break, and then I write from 10 o'clock until 12 and take a 2-hour break, and then from 2 o'clock until 4 and take a 2-hour break, and then from 6 o'clock to 8 I'll have a light supper. I'll be in bed by 9:30, 10, up again at 5:30. The first draft will take about 300 hours, 330 hours, about 6 weeks, 40, 45 days. And the book you are holding in your hand of A Prisoner of Birth is the 17th draft. Actually, no, you are holding the 16th because I've now corrected the proof you have in your hand with small emendations and changes. The 17th draft. So I would say to anyone listening, if you want to be a writer, you cannot knock up a book in a weekend. That's one of the great myths of all time. It is a dedicated profession which requires not only, obviously, a degree of talent, but it requires very hard work.
Now, of course, we're here today because of the audiobook, where, of course, voices and accents are very important. As you're writing a book, do you ever imagine the voices for your characters? Do you ever speak aloud?
You have to do the whole thing aloud. I've got a Cockney from the East End of London. I've got a public school boy who's a Queen's counsellor. I've got a Glaswegian and I knew someone who's got a Glaswegian accent. I can hardly hear what he says. And of course I've got Gene Hunksecker, a Texan American. So yes, you've got to get into their speech rhythm. Readers very quickly pick up if you've got that, and that's hard work as well.
There are famous examples in literary history of mistaken identities, and mistaken identity plays an important part in this book. Is it a favorite device of yours?
Well, after Cain and Abel, which was 25 years ago, I wanted to write something that I would really believe was the best thing I'd ever done. So I decided to read The Count of Monte Cristo, which of course the whole plot rests on a man escaping from jail to seek revenge on those who put him there, but having a pot of gold in order to be able to carry out what he wishes to do. So I realized before A Prisoner of Birth began that I would have to have the most wonderful way of escaping if I was going to beat Mr. Dumas, and I'd have to have a wonderful way of getting the pot of gold if I was going to beat Mr. Dumas. And if I couldn't achieve those two things, then the book had no standing. It wasn't there. So the first part of my life was sitting down thinking, how is he going to escape? Not over a roof, not dressed as an officer, not beating up someone. Let's go through all those cliches. And how would he get the pot of gold? Oh, he just happened to bump into a bank and there was a pot of gold. No, thank you. So I had to think of those two things most of all. How to get him out of jail and then he'd have a pot of money. The reason I mention that is if you or anyone listening to this wanted to seek revenge on 4 people, you've got to be not working, because you've got to spend your whole life seeking the revenge. 2, you've got to have so much money that you can do it. Most people on earth can't get revenge. They've neither the time nor the money. So Dumas got so brilliantly in The Count of Monte Cristo was that he realized this penniless man who'd been thrown in prison could not get revenge unless he had the pot of money. So as I repeat, getting him out of jail and giving him the income to defeat these 4 professional people was the toughest of all.
In your last book, False Impression, you provided a fascinating glimpse into the world of art. In this book, I was really intrigued by what we learned about the world of Swiss bankers and how discreet they are. How did you do your research?
On all things in my books, I loved, if I can, to bring to people something that they wouldn't know about. Obviously, the insight into prison was the key one, because there's a whole section in prison where one could write with some authority and knowledge and hope that the reader will say, well, my God, he knows, he's been there. In the case of Swiss bankers and their anonymity, I've come across Swiss bankers in my life, and I'll tell you a quick story about a man I sat next to in the Bahamas who said, who's that man sitting opposite Jeffrey? I know him. I know that man. I said, sorry, I've never seen him before. And he said, it's really bugging me. I know that guy, and he's not acknowledging me. The dinner was over. The guy walked away, and he said, why doesn't that guy, and says he, I know him. I know him. And then a third time on the balcony, he said, hey, Jeffrey, I just tell you, I've just worked out. He's my Swiss banker. They don't even acknowledge you in a situation where they walk into a dinner party and you're with them. They don't acknowledge you. Anonymity is there stock in trade.
You mentioned a minute ago how much of this book is set in a prison. How much did you pull from your own experiences?
Well, almost all of it, and indeed the characters. 2 or 3 of them were based on people I met in prison. Big Al is someone I shared a cell with, Big Al, God bless him. And that's where I hoped that I would be able to step ahead of the others and say, I've been there, I know what it's like. And it was the toughest section to write, but it sure ain't cliched.
In your books, there's a real sense of fairness.
Yes.
Is it fun for you to decide how those who deserve them are going to get their just desserts?
Well, in real life, of course, that so often doesn't happen. That's the truth. But in this book, you've got a hero. You've got 4 villains, and he's got to defeat all 4 of them. Otherwise, you haven't got a book. In real life, I'm afraid the villains often get away with it. I've mixed with really evil people who succeed and continue on being evil.
When people get a chance to meet you, what's the most common question that you're asked?
I think most people, the most common question is, where do you get your ideas? My reply is a courteous reply. I say, do you play the violin? And they say, no, I don't play the violin. Are you an opera singer? And they say, no, I'm not an opera singer. I say, no, neither am I. I tell stories.
And your many fans are so grateful that you do. Thanks so much for coming in, Jeffrey. It was great to have a chance to talk with you.
My pleasure.